I just wanted to give a very quick summary of, I did a video about the UK a few weeks ago and things have got much, much, much worse. So what we had was last week, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.75, and the UK, which is in a much worse position than America because its inflation is high, it's 10%, America's 8.3%. Therefore, you would be expected to raise your interest rates even higher than what they did. But they're incapable because their debt load is so high. So they only raised it 0.5%. That already shocked the market and the pound started sliding down. Now, that alone would have been bad. But then we had the mini budget of the new government of Liz Truss, who came in and slashed taxes across the board. Slashed taxes when the budget deficit had gone up from 6 billion was the August deficit in 2019. 12 billion was the August deficit for 2022. So it doubled, right? When you're meant to be coming out with growth, when you're coming out of the pandemic, nice hot summer, all the good things should come out, and we doubled the deficit. So things have spiraled out, and this is before any of these tax cuts have hit. So next year, what's it going to be? 20 billion? So markets basically have lost faith with the UK, both with the central bank and the government, and it is now facing a sovereign debt crisis. So sovereign debt crises normally occur when someone borrows in another currency. So the Asian crisis, Korea, for instance, they borrowed in dollars, they took a hit. That means the value of their won went down to the dollar. That means they have to print more won to pay off the dollar debt. But when you print, your dollar goes down, your currency goes down even further. So it's a cycle of destruction, right? In the end, you can't pay that dollar debt because your fake currency can't pay for the fake dollar, but it can't pay for that. So the UK is now going to face a sovereign debt crisis, not because it has most obviously all its debt is in pounds, right? So therefore you would just print it and pay it off, but because people now have no faith in your currency, they realize it's printed money. Everyone has to realize since we left the fiat system in 1971, so the dollar has been the peg. Dollar is also total trash, total fiat, but everyone has to keep in line. Everyone has to keep in line. So the Fed can print, you can print. The Fed can't print, you have to not print. That's the way it works, and that's how it's always been. The Fed can do it, then everyone can move into line. And that's why all governments have been borrowing, all governments have been spending like crazy. Inflation in the last 40 years is the worst it's ever been in history. Just massive inflation in 40 years. Think about house prices where they've been like from £1,000 to now they're £1 million. It's absolutely absurd. This is not an inflation stats, obviously, because they don't show up in inflation statistics. But look at assets where they've gone to. It's gone beyond multiples. So everyone keeps in line with the Fed. When you start not keeping in line with the Fed, when you start thinking, and this is why another question people have had, they've been like, why did Sweden need to increase interest rates last week by 0.75? Why did Switzerland have to increase by 0.5? Remember, Sweden didn't do any lockdown. They didn't waste any money on the scam. They didn't do anything. So why would they have to? Their debt is pretty good. They didn't incur so much debt. The answer is they have to stay in line with the Fed. Everyone has to stay in line with the Fed. If you don't keep in line, then everyone realizes, whoa, you're a fake printed currency, right? You're not real. Obviously, all of them aren't real, but they have the pretense of being real. So when you don't do that, you're in trouble. The only currency that was getting away with that was Japan, right? So Japan was just let their currency depreciate 40% in order to hold that 10-year at 0.25. But even now, we were revealed last year that they were also they got involved in the foreign exchange market to strengthen the value of the yen against the dollar. What does that mean? They're selling treasuries. So now we know China sold most of their treasuries in order also for them to keep a low interest rate. and now Japan is doing the same thing. Everyone is liquidating treasuries. That's basically what's happening. In order to get dollars. So everyone's selling their reserve assets in order to get dollars. Problem with England, it has no reserve assets. It's a joke of a country. It never thought about the future. It sold its gold at rock bottom prices. It sold all its companies. It has no strategy. It's no longer. The UK is beyond a basket. I think Nigeria has a more solid plan than Britain. That's how ridiculous Britain is. There is nothing. Everything they do is stupid. Let's support, Ukraine. Why, you idiots? You've just increased your energy prices. Let's support environmental ESG rubbish. But it's cost ineffective, and you are burdening every single person with a green levy on their energy bill. Everything they do is a disaster. I don't think there's one. I've never seen such a bad budget, and in fact it was noted that it was the worst budget since 1972, and that led to them eventually going to the IMF. Britain went to the IMF in 1974, and then the winter of discontent in 1978. So there is Britain is. I think it's going to be much quicker than even that. I think that took 7 years, 2-3 years. This is going to be like in a few months. It's over. There's nothing supporting the pound. There's nothing there. It's a joke of a country with a huge deficit that it cannot fund, with a currency that can't be supported by its central bank, with no reserves, with nothing. It's really, really bad.